and welcome to another edition of Seattle City Plus Civically Speaking. Today, I am pleased to have Washington Secretary of State Steve Hobbs with us today. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great, Alicia. Thanks for having me on.
No, I'm great. I'm glad. I know it's a super busy time right now. And I know for our side too, we're starting our debates tonight. And so we've been doing a lot around voter engagement. And this is just a perfect topic, especially when we talk about future voters and the Gen Z vote. So I am excited to learn more about some of the programs that you guys have coming out of there because your office reached out to us about it. And just to kind of get some more background on what the office is doing, what some of the goals are, and maybe some of the successes that you're seeing along the way. So first to start off, at Seattle City Club, we are amplifying the youth voice through our newly formed Civically Engaged Youth Council, which we started back in April. One of the goals is to increase the number of Gen Z voters participating in elections. And I think in our last election, I think the Gen Z vote was maybe 6%, which we know can be so much higher. So again, one of the parts of what we're focused on is voter education. So can you tell us more about the Future Voter program that you guys have?
Sure. It started before me. 2019 allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote. And on their 18th birthday, they're automatically registered here in the state of Washington. So that makes it a lot simpler because then they know, hey, 18, I'm already signed up. Now this is recent, right? So, and this is starting to come online because 2019 is when we started it. And a person who signs up to register to vote may not vote until reaching 18 unless that person is 17 at the primary election. So this recent primary elections that we were at, if somebody was 17 years old, but they were going to turn 18 by the general election, they would be allowed to vote. And that was the same with the presidential primary, which you might recall was a long time ago. It seemed like forever ago. But those young individuals who were 17 years old, but were going to be 18 during the time of the general election, had the opportunity to vote.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The other
go
thing,
ahead. Go ahead. I cut you off.
Thing is, since I took office, one thing I want to do is be a little more aggressive with reaching out to our young people. And so one of the things that my office has done is try to go where young people are at. So Emerald City Comic-Con, went there, PAX, a lot of young people at PAX.
Yes.
And so we're trying to be a little more active and being where they're at.
So since we are talking about young people and we've been talking about voter integrity and privacy, since we're looking at folks that are under the 18, is their information protected? Is it private? Does it become public at some point? How does that work?
Yeah, the state law, has made it very clear that the future voters' information is not made public or accessible until they're 18. And then when they turn 18, they're just like everybody else, right? I mean, that's how, candidates, when they get doorbelling lists, they'll go to a house and, anyone who's a registered voter will be identified. And again, just to remind people, nobody knows who you voted for, but people will know if you're a voter and which elections you actually voted in.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That was actually going to be my next question because I know I've seen different versions of that answer, not from your office per se, but online and misinformation.
Yes.
So thank you for highlighting that. Now, the other thing that you guys are doing, and again, I don't have children, so I don't have kids in the school system or anything like that. So a lot of this has been a new learning for me. Student mock election.
Yeah.
Did that start before you came in as well? Is that something that was a 2019 thing, or is that relatively new?
Student mock elections have been around, actually. Okay. And we go, I'm looking at, I had a screen here up where it showed me the mock election, but it was like, I think we had all the way down to fourth grade to 12. And it includes, here we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, I was right. What do you know? Fourth grade all the way to 12th grade. And just because I know I get this question a lot, is it does include private schools. So,
Hmm.
look, the teachers got to get involved. It's just not automatic, right? So
Right.
hopefully those teachers are participating in this. What a great opportunity, right? Because it's once
Right.
every 4 years. It's the presidential year. We're a great learning opportunity for young people.
Yeah. So with this mock election, I know the one that we just showed right now was the results from the primary. So it looks like on October the 1st, the general will open up. Is that how that's working?
That is correct.
Okay.
New materials will come up. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's also in conjunction with OSPI and a couple of different offices.
Yeah, we coordinate, with them. We coordinate with any teacher that wants to work with us. We have we totally enjoy working with our educators out there on this.
So is this so actually that gives me another question then.
Mhm.
So from the educator perspective, is this something that they opt into or is this something that all the teachers in those districts
No,
get?
it's not automatic. They got to kind of go into this. They got to request to do this.
And how has the response been?
Well, it's been pretty good. I mean, you can see that screen over there. Obviously, we'd love for to do more, but some of these teachers might have other ways on trying to educate young people about voting. They might be do. I mean, a lot of them sometimes do it on their own. They don't need the state, but we'd love for them to be a part of it because we provide the materials. So.
And are those materials all available digitally? Does it have to be something that's mailed? Is it physical? How does that work?
Wow, that I'm not quite sure. I think it's a combination of both, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth on that. Yeah.
Okay. So you already kind of covered my next question was who could participate. So it is any student, whether it's public school, private school, charter, homeschool
Yes. Yeah.
as well. Okay. And I put that answer there as well. So and it's K through 12. So actually that's interesting to me. So from an elementary perspective,
Mhm.
I presume that the curriculum is a little different than those in high school. But are they still voting on the same things, but just presented differently? That's
Yeah,
I'm
I mean
curious.
it's the same thing, um, and it's on paper
Mhm.
because that's what they're going to do when they're adults. So we try
Yeah.
to mimic as close as we can to what's going on.
And I'm showing the link to the dashboard that I showed earlier.
Mhm.
And again, it's a long link, but if people just go to the General Secretary of State website, all that information will be there. So you already touched on another thing I wanted to ask you about, which was the
Mhm.
paper balloting. Is that purposeful to kind of mimic what actually happens in when the adults vote? Or because a lot of people go, well, we're in a digital age. Why isn't it online? Why isn't it this way or that way?
Yeah, no, a couple of reasons. Number one, I mean, you just kind of said that because we're preparing young people to actually do it for real, and they're going to be doing it on paper. The other thing is that just general knowledge about this, but paper is a lot more secure. We're constantly being under attack by nation state actors. We've had 3 counties that were hit pretty heavily from cyber attack,
Mm-hmm.
and so having a paper ballot, you have that evidence that's right there, right? So let's say you have a recount or something bad happens, you can't cyber attack a piece of paper, and so having that there is just it gives a sense of security that we need.
You know, it's making me think about it. So we did a civic cocktail last week on elections, and we actually had the King County Julie Y. She was there to
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk about the process, and we actually had a couple of people in the audience who are been like longtime observers, and I had never really met one before and knew what that all entailed. Can you talk about the role of the observer and kind of how important you feel like that is to the process?
It's very important because it gives a legitimacy to the process. Anybody can actually be an observer. You have to go down to your local county elections office. Now, each county is going to be different, right? They might, have you sign a form and maybe do a quick class because they don't want you to go into areas that's going to interfere with the actual election. And King County, they got an amazing setup. I don't know if you've ever been there, but your listeners, if you ever get a chance, please go down there and check it out. It's an amazing facility. But there you can kind of walk around. You can actually see the process from different angles. all the way from the opening of the ballots. You can see the tabulation machines. So this is good to have an observer because, if somebody says, hey, I saw, people sneak in a bunch of ballots, it's like, well, I don't know how you saw it because we had a bunch of observers there and they didn't see that, right?
Yeah.
And we always like to encourage to have, members of the both parties, right? So have a Republican and a Democrat there. And I encourage people who's like have doubts about our elections. There's a King 5 poll, 35% of Washingtonians don't trust our elections. It's really
Yeah.
surprising, right?
Yeah.
Hey, 35% people out there, if you're listening, if you're tuned into this podcast, check out the election center and actually see for yourself, because you're going to find that it's like, hey, all these myths I had about, election fraud, not true.
Yeah.
Not true. See it for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. You can see it with your own eyes.
Well, no, actually, so that was the other part of the Civic Cocktail that we did last week. Was we partnered, or we did a presentation with Hubble Communications, who just did a poll on kind of voter engagement and voter education, and they specifically looked at a predominantly red county and a predominantly blue county to kind of see what was the same and what was different. But he had a lot of those statistics, especially with the one that you just shared, about 35% of Washingtonians not trusting the process. So we hope to share that out. Actually, tomorrow, I think is going to be ready for public consumption, and we'll share that out to people as well. The other thing that came out of that too was, I think I was under the impression that to be an observer, it was only kind of, you can either be a Democrat or a Republican. Can you be just non-committed?
You can be
an
non-committed.
average person can?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And is there an age limit? Like, do you have to be 18? Can a teenager do it or no?
It probably depends on the county, but I haven't seen that restriction.
Okay.
Obviously you don't want a 2-year-old toddler just kind of running amok in there, right?
No, it's very, very true. And so let's go back a little bit to, I think over the past couple of years, especially this year, again, a lot of conversation around voter integrity and information not coming out as fast or too slow, depending on who you talk to or what the scenario is. So I know that the Secretary of State's website has experienced some malfunctions, during the primary and general elections in the not too distant past. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like maybe what happened?
Sure.
And then also, are there some things that are coming up that will kind of hopefully have that happen less frequently?
Yeah. So there's a couple things going on. So one, there was a display error that happened that was quickly fixed. However, there's also load issues, right? So if you have a whole bunch of people checking it on election night, which, I know you probably do that, Alicia, and all of our friends probably do that, right?
Yeah.
Refresh, right?
Yeah.
That puts a load on the website itself. Now, we try to test these loads out, but there's a lot that just happens, right? Depending on the issue, depending on who's running for office. But here's the other thing that people need to keep in mind, because people always get frustrated, go, I don't understand, my county's up and I don't see it on the Secretary of State's website. That's because what is happening behind the scenes, what you're not seeing, is we have to verify what they're sending us. So, the county pulls their results from the tabulation machine, right? And then they're uploading it up to us, and they're reading they got the numbers, the PDF too. And we got a PDF, so we're matching, right? In the meantime, they can go ahead and post their stuff up. Okay. But we're not going to post our stuff up until we are 100% certain that the numbers that we have match the numbers that we are receiving. So we will always be delayed. And I do mention this as often as I can, but people always forget. They just get frustrated. Hit refresh. And they try to reach me. It's like, what's going on? What's going on, Steve? What are the numbers? It's like, hey, dude, you know what? If you just wait 15 minutes, it's going to come up. Don't worry, you're going to know about it. But in all seriousness, we don't want to put up a number unless it's absolutely verified. And so we're going to take the time to do that. So remember, 8:00 happens. All these counties are reporting to us, right? In time. So we got to take the time to, verify each one. go through the process. That's why it takes time to do that. In the meantime, you've got news agencies that will just take the information as it comes. They haven't verified it and they just post it.
Right.
And so what we try to do is verify everything.
Have you seen any significant difference in voting patterns or even percentages this particular year, since it is one presidential year, but two, statewide, you have, your two biggest offices non-incumbent in theory.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I was really surprised that we had a higher turnout in the primary.
Hmm.
I thought it was going to be, mid 30s,
Yeah.
34. It went up. And I think this is just a theory, right, that I have, but I think it had to do with a combination of factors is that you had, several statewide offices that for the first time, there was an incumbent. It was open seat. And so people, and then you had like 28 people running for governor.
Yeah.
So people were like taking their time. And so we saw a massive amount of ballots show up on the day of the election, basically,
Yeah.
because of that. People were waiting. And I think the other factor is that when Biden dropped out and Harris announced that rejuvenated probably a bunch of people, especially on the Democratic side and young people, to go out and vote. Even though the name wasn't on the ballot,
Mhm.
Harris was not on the ballot, it still motivated people to be involved.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, just before we came on to do this conversation, I was listening online to another commentator who was talking with someone from the Washington GOP about a couple of different lawsuits, and one being about the 30-day
Mhm.
registration rule. Any thoughts on that? I
Yeah,
know I have two different schools of thought. I
sure.
don't, I can see a pro and a con on either side, but kind of curious to know what the office's stance on that
Right.
is.
So Alicia, we had this lawsuit show up, right, a couple months ago by this group, and they hadn't just sued us; they sued other people too, right? So other states. So
Yeah.
and they were fairly successful. So here they sued us and saying, hey, you're in violation of the U.S. Constitution, and getting with our attorneys, looking at our laws, was like, there's no way we're going to win this, right? And then there's a matter of this. Think about it. It's like, if I'm moving to the state of Washington, I just came up from California. Hey, look, that's just the way it is. I had to sell my house. This is the time. This is the time I'm here. I'm within 30 days. Sorry, I'm here. I'm a Washingtonian. Like, they probably have a right to vote. They have a right to voice their opinion and have a voice in government. Now, the opponents will say, well, but you're allowed to vote in your other state within the 30-day period. But here's the thing. If I cancel my registration, it's done, right? So if I cancel my registration, I move up here. I can't vote in the other state. I don't live there. I live here, right? So let's give these people a voice. Let's not do voter suppression. I'm sorry, GOP, that you're upset about it, but the fact of the matter is the U.S. Constitution is the law of the land, and that's what we have to follow. And I get it; that's in our state constitution, but we have to follow the U.S. Constitution. That it's a supremacy clause, right? And then I know the other factor of this is, well, maybe we could have two different ballots, right? Ballots, which you could do that, right? Ballot for the federal races and then one for the locals. So the problem is that is really hard to do. To divide that up, we don't have the capability of doing that right now. And the legislature never gave me permission to do that because the legislature has to give me permission to do that.
Yeah. And I know, again, like you said, it's from the U.S. Constitution, but there's also a state rule law around it as well. How
Yeah.
does one? Is there a checks and balances? Let's say, as someone who did move here from California,
Mhm.
and came up here, if I didn't take it upon myself to cancel my California registration, but still
Mhm.
voted up here, is there something in the background that kind of checks to make sure that I didn't vote in two states
Oh
at
yeah,
once?
yeah. We catch people. So that thank you for bringing that up. This people don't realize that, our state and several states are on something called ERIC, which is the Electronic Registration Information Center, right? So
Yeah.
think of it as a system that allows state voter registration, voter databases talk to each other. If you're a state that doesn't have one, California is actually one that doesn't have one, but they're
Really?
thinking about joining, Eric. They're thinking about
Okay.
joining it.
Okay.
What they have to do is the laborious task of like reaching out to all the other states and trying to compare stuff, right? And we have caught people. It's very rare, like single digits. So I'll give you an example. There was a person in Whatcom County that was a student in another state in a college there, and they voted twice because remember, in this state, you know, you're going to get even if you're overseas or whatever, you'll get a ballot, right? And it showed up at her house, but she registered the vote in Colorado or wherever the state was, and she voted there, and she voted in her home state. Well, here's the thing: if you do that, we are going to get a report back saying, you know, this person voted in the same election in two different places, and that person was talked to actually. It's the county that prosecutes, and so basically, this young person was told, "Hey, uh, you voted in two places at the same time," and the student responded was, "Well, I, I don't think I violated anything because I voted in the local elections in
Mm.
Whatcom County, but I voted for the federal ones in Colorado, so I'm good, right?" And no,
No.
you committed a felony. But now, did that person get prosecuted? No, because they didn't know and they didn't throw any elections. But my point is in this story is we catch people. It does happen, and I want to bust that myth where people think that people can just do this willy nilly and not get away with it. Right?
Yeah.
We catch these people. Alicia, we also catch people that like a ballot shows up and it's like, wait a minute, this person's dead. What
Mm.
happens? We'll know about that. And what ends up happening is like, because again, databases talk to other databases. Now, one or two things happen 99% of the time. We get a ballot from someone who's passed away. Either A, they voted, signed the ballot, dropped it off, and then they died afterwards.
Mm.
It still counts, right? Because remember, there's 18 days when you get the ballot to the election, about 45 if you're overseas. So there's a chance, right? You could hit something. I could get hit by a car, you know, who knows, right? It could happen. The other thing that happens is, and it's kind of sad, and usually get one or two of these, is that a widow or a widower votes for their loved one that recently deceased
Mm.
through the grieving process, right? So they vote for them. And the reason we catch it again, because we got the database and we check every signature. And a lot of times we'll check the signatures of the entire household that did the vote, right? So if you'll notice, you know, John Smith's signature looks very similar to Mary Smith. And Mary Smith might have tried to copy John Smith, but there are things that human beings do with signatures that allow us to catch that. It's like, oh, well, these signatures don't seem right, right? From the records we have, and then we'll flag it.
How?
Again, those people are not prosecuted because are we really going to prosecute, you know, a 90-year-old Mary Smith because she through the grieving process was voting for her husband? Probably not.
Got it.
That's up to the county though. But yeah.
What is the time frame? Um, in an example that you gave about the young person, like how long does it take to catch that, whether someone's using Eric versus not?
Yeah, it all depends, right? How fast the system is going and when we get it in the mail and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But is it? I would presume it's not something like 3 months. Like it's something that's maybe relatively.
Some of it takes time because we get the report from Eric, right?
Yeah.
That takes a little longer. But sometimes, like a signature, we're going to find out really quick,
Yeah.
really quick,
I've been a
like
subject to
that
that.
day
So
of. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Well, I want to give you the last word on something because, like I said, this was very timely for us to have this
Mhm.
conversation because, again, we have our debates happening and
Yeah.
we're pushing voter registration and getting younger people registered to vote as well. So, that being said, what message would you like to leave with voters, current and future alike, about the importance of their vote?
Well, first of all, your vote's very important. I mean, we just saw the lands commissioner race where, up to Grove, landslide up to Grove, won, what, 52 votes or whatever. And we had to do a recount. So your vote does count. The other thing I want to put out there, and this is very important, in a world in which we are peppered with disinformation, right? Both our own people, right? It's happening with our own people putting out this information. We are competing with overseas malign actors like Russia, who purposely are sending disinformation to have us question our own democracy. And so, what I would tell people out there is, if you see a piece of news that's showing up on social media, you should question it. See if it's being reported in mainstream media. If you have any other questions, go contact your county auditor or the Secretary of State's office, and they'll tell you, they'll tell you the truth of what's going on. And also, if this person that you're seeing on your feed, are they even real?
Right.
Because guess what? They will,
Oh, yeah.
like criminal organizations and nation state actors will make up people, right? Or bots. And it's not a real person. They're sending you misinformation so that you will spread it like a virus. So just be aware of that.
Secretary Hobbs, thank you again so much for joining me today. I'm about to run out to the first debate now, but hopefully those that are watching, if you haven't registered to vote, please do so. And if you are registered, make sure to utilize it. So take
All right.
care.
Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.